Okay, this week we're going to talk about both reptiles and birds. So, our first class that we'll talk about is going to be reptiles. Once again, kingdom is going to be Animalia. Phylum is still Chordata because, once again, they have a backbone. Now, the class is going to be Reptilia. And Reptilia is supposed to be one of the oldest phylums that we have here on Earth, and or at least that live on the land. And about 300 million years ago, they were supposedly evolved from amphibians to better live on land. So some of them, like our lizards, may look like some of our amphibians, like salamanders. However, they're better adapted to living on land. A lot of the key features that we have of reptiles will show that ability to better live on land than those of amphibians. So we'll start with the strong bony skeleton. A lot of our reptiles will even have toes that have claws attached to them. That's made or that shows signs of them being able to walk on land, dig holes, climb trees, and be better adapted to all the different terrain that's going to be found on land. The only the only reptiles that do not have toes are going to be our snakes. Second key feature of reptiles is going to be the ectothermic metabolism. This has both advantages and disadvantages for this group of reptiles. The advantage of ectothermic metabolism means that they're going to have a slow metabolism and thus less food. Ectothermic. Ecto means outward. Thermic means heat. So they rely on heat from outside sources in order to help them with breaking down food. So the less food is an advantage, so they don't necessarily have to eat as often as you and I do. However, it also comes with disadvantages because they rely on heat from the sun and from the environment. They can't live in cold places, so you won't see reptiles living in your north or south poles. Uh, and they cannot keep up high activity levels for long periods of time because they once again rely on getting energy from the sun and helping with breaking down their food. They must usually what you'll see is they'll actually just bask in the sun or warm their bodies by just sitting on a log or a rock and bathing in the sun in order to help with that breakdown of food. You'll see this basking in the sun a lot with our reptiles, especially after they eat, as they once again need help with breaking down that food. Third key feature is going to be dry, scaly skin. This scaly skin is actually almost watertight, so it helps once again keep that water inside the body. Don't let it escape to the environment. There's different types of scales, I guess you would call them, on the skin. There's actually scutes and scales. The only difference between the two is the scutes are going to be the external bony plates that are overlaid with horns. So you can see these little ones here that come across the toes of this alligator are going to be scutes. Okay, and then also the points on the back of their hide is also going to be scutes as well. Those things that stick up out of the water. Uh, Scales are going to be usually the smaller, rounder, not as bony structures. Once again, both are going to be used in order to lock in that water, keep it from evaporating out or losing it to the environment. Fourth key feature for reptiles that makes them better adapted to living on land is the amniotic egg. The amniotic egg allows for the reptiles to have an aquatic environment for their embryo to develop in. And so the egg is going to actually be filled with that amniotic fluid. It provides a stable fluid environment for that reptile to develop in. And what you'll see is that some of these eggs will actually the parents will take care of. Others of these eggs, they will just lay and leave. But that egg itself is going to have that fluid inside, which allows for them to still develop in that aquatic environment. However, it's going to be now happening on land. Fifth key feature is going to be respiration. They actually have well developed lungs, and these lungs actually are going to be better adapted for living on land. Remember, we talked about amphibians, they still had some gills, depending on the group of amphibians. We only had a few, like our frog, that would have lungs, but reptiles are all going to have lungs, and they're going to have better developed lungs than that of amphibians. They have folds that are found within their lungs that almost create these little tiny pockets. This increases the surface area, once again, increasing the ability for that blood to be exposed to the oxygen and allow for that oxygen to be absorbed into the bloodstream. Reptiles will also have a muscle similar to our diaphragm, and it's used in order to, once again, draw in air. So it's going to provide even more of the ability to get that oxygen into the bloodstream and do it efficiently. The sixth key feature is going to be a partially divided ventricle. So if we were to look at the heart of our reptile, it's going to have a right atrium, a left atrium, and then we'll have our right and left ventricle, and it's going to be partially divided by this what we call a septum, similar to what you have between your two nose or the two nostrils of your nose. That's a septum as well. It's just going to be a dividing layer that is going to help prevent a full mixing of our blood. And so what this does is it keeps our oxygen poor blood from mixing in with our oxygen rich blood. It's still not completely separated, at least not for all of our reptiles, but it makes it more efficient than the amphibian heart that we had with our frogs, where the blood was all going to be mixed. What you'll find is that our crocodiles will actually have a completely divided heart, and thus, rather than having three openings to the heart or three chambers of the heart, we actually have now four. And that is going to be very similar to what we'll see with our birds and our mammals as well. So what you'll see here is, once again, this is a structure of the heart. Our right atrium is going to collect blood that comes back from the body as deoxygenated blood. That's our blue blood. It's going to then go down into the right atrium, collect, and then go down into the right ventricle, where it's then going to be pumped to the lungs, become oxygenated. That's our red blood. Return back to the left atrium, to the left ventricle, and then be pumped out to the rest of the body. The seventh key feature of reptiles is going to be internal fertilization. This, once again, is going to be an adaptation for living on land. If you remember, our frogs and our other amphibians all relied on water in order to fertilize their eggs, whether that's the female laying the eggs and the male coming over with the sperm, or whether they had to lay the eggs in water. This actually allows for that kind of fluid environment, but inside of the body. And so it protects the gametes from actually drying out or being damaged by the elements. There's two different types of internal fertilization. There's oviparous, which is going to be our young, which will hatch from eggs. This would be like your turtles and your tortoises, where mom will go lay the eggs, and then from those eggs will hatch the young. Most of your snakes and lizards will also do this, and then all your crocodilians will have this type of egg development. The next type is going to be ovoviviparous, which is going to be your females that will have those eggs. They will fertilize inside her body. She will keep them inside her body until right before they hatch or after they hatch. And what will happen is it will almost be similar to or close to live birth, where once those eggs are ready to hatch, they will hatch, or they'll lay the eggs and then they'll hatch. And this is going to be a few species of our snakes and then a few species of our lizards as well. So if we look at today's reptiles, we have several different groups that we'll talk about. You can see they're well adapted to living in different environments, and they're well adapted within their groups as well. The first order is going to be Squamata. Squamata will contain our snakes and our lizards. They are characterized by the fact that they have lower jaws that are loosely connected to their skull, which means that they can actually detach that lower jaw and open their mouth to be wider than their head and swallow prey that actually is bigger than their head. Within that group, we have the family Lacertilia, which is going to be our lizards. Most of our lizards are going to be herbivores. They can be anywhere less than a foot long to over 10 feet long. Lizards are characterized by the fact that they can actually break off and regrow their tails in order to escape predators. So if there was, let's say, a bird hunting down a lizard, it bites it by the tail can actually fall off and regrow. Now, when they regrow the tail later on in life, it does not have the bone structure, so it does not have all the same capabilities as the first tail. The largest lizard is going to be the Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon, or the scientific name is going to be Varanus komododensis, is actually going to be the largest monitor lizard. It's located in Indonesia. These guys can get over 10 feet long. And what is unique about them, they have a poisonous bite. Their mucus actually contains digestive enzymes. And so what will happen is in order for them to hunt down their prey, they will actually follow their prey, bite their prey, and then follow it for weeks on end until eventually those digestive enzymes break down the tissue within that prey and then kill it eventually. And so then they can feast on the remains of that body. But that lower jaw contains those two glands. They secrete those toxic proteins or those digestive enzymes that then allow for them to basically poison their prey. There are so many snakes that we actually classify this as being a suborder. The serpentines is going to be our snakes. That's where we get the word serpents from. They supposedly evolved during the Cretaceous period, which was about 65.5 million years ago. Once again, they're very flexible with their lower jaw, which once again allows for them to swallow things that are even bigger than their head. And you can see, like this guy down here probably had some type of food that he's now working on digesting, and so he is probably basking in the sun right there, trying to help with the breakdown of that food. Snakes are unique. They actually have two different types of organs. The first one is known as the Jacobson's organ. It's located on the inside of their mouth, and this is what they use in order to smell their prey. So this is why snakes will actually flick out their tongue. What they're doing with that tongue is they're actually collecting little samples of chemicals in the air, and bringing those chemicals back into their mouth and running them across that Jacobson's organ. And that allows for them to detect where their prey are at and basically smell out their prey and become better predators because of that ability. The pit organ is going to be another organ that is some of our snakes will have. It's going to be used in order to sense body heat or give them that infrared picture. This allows for snakes to actually see without using their eyes. They can detect body heat within the environment and the difference between cold and hot, and thus be able to identify maybe like a rat or a small mammal that is giving off that body heat, and then be able to attack from there. There's two groups of snakes. The first one is going to be known as constrictors. They contain no teeth for eating. However, what they rely on is actually wrapping their bodies around their prey and then squeezing so tight with their body that they suffocate the prey, and then are able to go about swallowing after that. You'll see in this group, this is going to be your anacondas, your boas, and your pythons. These guys like, once again, to wrap that body. They usually have a very muscular body that they use in order to then squeeze off the blood circulation and the ability of that prey to actually get oxygen into their bloodstream and thus kill it and then swallow it from there. The other group is going to be your venomous snakes. These venomous snakes contain modified salivary glands that produce venom, and they inject this venom into their prey with these hollow teeth. I'll show you a picture of that on the next slide. There's several different groups of these. There's your cobras, your kraits, and your coral snakes. You have some sea snakes that are also going to be venomous, adders and vipers, and then what we're most common with here in Kansas is going to be your rattlesnakes, your water moccasins, and your copperheads. So you can see from this picture, they actually have that fang out in front, and in that fang, they're going to have a little venom gland or canal, and it allows for that venom to actually travel down from their compressor muscle back here in the venom gland back here on the back side of their mouth. So when they bite down, what happens is that compressor muscle is actually going to squeeze this gland and then squeeze through this little tiny canal the venom out through the fangs and into the prey that they're trying to kill. The next order is going to be Chelonia. Chelonia is going to be classified as our reptiles that have a hard and bony plate-like shells, and these will be our turtles and our tortoises. The shells that they contain are actually going to be fused plates of their bone that are going to be covered in skin. And so you can see in this carapace over here, this is going to be the top or the dorsal part of the shell. You can see part of that is going to contain the backbone of that turtle or tortoise as well. The bottom side or the ventral portion is usually going to be a lot smoother, lighter in color, and it's going to be the ventral portion. The reason why it's smoother is because this is what they will drag sometimes on the ground or sit on when they're on the ground. The carapace is usually going to have much more bony or scute-like structures on the back of their on the shell, and it's also going to be more colorful in order to blend in with its environment. Most of our order of Chelonia, our turtles and our tortoises, are going to be herbivores. However, some will be carnivores as well. If you don't know the difference between a turtle and a tortoise, here's the difference. Turtles will live mostly in water, and because of that, they're better adapted for swimming in the water. They have a more streamlined disc-shaped shell. It's not as domed in structure, and it's going to be smoother on top and usually flatter as well, which allows for it to then scoot its way through the water. Tortoises mostly live on land, and so they actually will have their legs are going to be better adapted to being under the body, lifting up that shell and allowing for them to carry it as they move on land. And so they're better adapted for that. Turtles, you'll actually see have their front legs and their back legs are going to be more spread out on the sides of their body, while tortoises will be more underneath their body. Next order is going to be Crocodilia. This is going to be our aquatic reptiles, both containing our crocodiles and our alligators. They will have eyes that are located high on either side of their head, which allows for them to be better adapted for living in the water, because once again, these guys will rely on ambushing their prey. They will also have nostrils that are located on the very top of their snout, which once again only allows for their snout to be out of the water so that they can breathe, and they can have the rest of their body under that water, disguised, waiting for prey to come by. They are aggressive hunters that rely on that stealth in order to, once again, hunt down or surprise their prey. As animals come to the watering hole in order to drink water, they will usually be waiting by the shore and then ambush their prey from there. Members of this order will care for their young even after they hatch, which is going to be, up to this point, is actually unique to this group. However, once we look forward to birds and mammals, this characteristic becomes more of a common feature. The last order is going to be Rhynchocephalia. This contains our tuataras. There's only 2 species of these guys left. Both live on the islands of New Zealand. They're kind of unique because of the fact that they are usually more active at lower temperatures, maybe at nighttime rather than during the day, which for reptiles that's a little bit different because of their ectothermic metabolism. But scientists actually believe that these guys have remained relatively unchanged for about 150 million years. So they believe that these are the oldest or closest thing that we have here on Earth to our dinosaurs. Okay, that's our reptile notes.